Hello. A few weeks ago I was working on this, the Grundig VP100 portable video recorder that takes these extremely unusual CVC format cassettes. And there were several models of machine made for these tapes, but they were all unusual, this one exquisitely so. So right down my street. I've been working on this and I found that there was a particular voltage which is a 9.5 volt signal voltage that should be there during playback, that was on parts of the board but not on other parts, which I could work out from the rather poor quality diagrams I've got. I put in a link to supply the head amplifier, which had been missing that really important voltage during playback. So we can give that a go and see if it's made any improvement. And I'd left a little thing on the YouTube community tab for people to vote for whether they thought it would, the link would fix it, or half fix it, or not fix it at all. Also, we'll have a few more things to play with later on, perhaps with CVC as well. Anyway, let's get stuck in with this. So what I've done here is connect a wire from the supply 9.5 volts during playback, which is over here on pin 11, this edge connector, over to not the IC itself, which is in the head amplifier, but to the top side of the supply inductor, so that will provide the 9.5 volts to all the devices that come off that point via their own inductors. If I directly powered the IC, it might have worked, but I'd have probably had noise. So that's hopefully going to fill in the missing 9.5 volt supply rail. So we're ready to try it. Wish me luck. So if I'm right, we'll get a good picture. If I'm wrong, we could get damage. So I really have to be right. Power it up. Still no picture. In fact, the results are exactly the same. I am very surprised at that. Let's measure the the voltage on that supply pin. So this is the point I was supposed to have my 9.5 volt supply during playback, or about 9.4. There's our 9.3 volts now. So that's correct, but still no picture. That's deeply disappointing and surprising. I'm going to have a look at the output from the head amplifier, which is the IC that now has some power. It's stuck high. It's not FM signal at all. We're getting our switching signal okay. Nearly everything on the oscilloscope is high for that IC, so there's some other fault now. Our problem with lack of playback picture is in this area. So this is the IC that we had no power on earlier, and it does now have power. This is the first head amplifier that goes into this IC, which does the switching between the two heads. And I can probe around in here and see that this amplifier module is powered. It takes power from the same line that this does. There's the inductor for its power comes from the same point as the inductor for this IC's power. So that's now correctly powered up. But all the signals seem to be just high around here. We could say, well, it sounds like a grounding fault. And that would be logical insofar as when I took this off, I did unfortunately lift some of the ground tracks, but that's all been reinstated carefully. I think I'm going to have to take this off again though to look underneath here and do some probing out. Our difficulty is though, very few of the components are marked up on the PCB, so I don't know what is what, and all the diagrams I've got are quite low resolution, so I'm really struggling to debug this circuit. I don't have oscillograms or voltages for any of the points. If I had had some sort of mistake somewhere, I wouldn't be surprised if I'd knocked out one channel. but there are two channels in here and neither are working, so there's something quite fundamentally wrong in this area. I think I really do need the service manual, a proper service manual, not just the schematics. I can revisit it though in the future, and I intend to, but right now we're a little bit stuck for lack of information, even though I've now, with this wire, correctly powered up a lot of electronics that weren't powered up before. Okay, let's take a break from that one. Do you remember though, I was talking about another very common problem with these, that the Technicolor Funai machines tend to get jammed in the lacing and unlacing, and they can make a horrible squealing noise. Well, I've managed to make a machine do that. It's an NTSC machine, so that was for American market tapes rather than PAL, and it will sometimes lace okay and get stuck at the end and make a horrible noise, and you can give it a push, the loading mechanism, with a screwdriver, or jab between stop and play a few times, or jabbing the play button, and you can get it to complete the lacing up. Sometimes also it can jam in the unlace mode, so you have to give it a push with a screwdriver to get it to unlace. And sometimes it won't even start to lace, and I have to give it a push with a screwdriver to get it going. So all right nuisance. Really could use a better machine than that.
Then why don't you just fix it?
Good question. Because the cause is some swollen plastic in a ring involved in the loading mechanism. And I've tried taking that apart, which is really hard, and greasing it, and it gets you nowhere. The actual plastic itself is at fault. So yeah, it would be really nice if I had another NTSC machine, but it's the only one I've got.
Then what's this machine that you've been having me unwrap?
Oh, what have you got there, Alex? Well, this came in from America. I was expecting another portable, but to my surprise and delight, I've got another Technicolor Showcase. This one, an NTSC one. And if I can fix this, then it hopefully would be much better than the other one. Right, let's get stuck into this then. Now this of course is 110 volt, comes with a 110 volt type cable, so I'll need to run that off one of my transformers. Perhaps I'll just move the Grundig one out of the way for a minute while we get set up to look at this one. I'm sure it will need some mechanical assistance, almost certainly drive belts, and we'll go from there. This has got some sort of modifications. It's audio and video, line and tape. So that may mean there are input connectors. That's a bit loose. I want output connectors, so that'll be a separate problem later, and I'll need to fix that. I'll just check it's alive first. So the power cable is connected to a multi-voltage isolation transformer set to about 110 volts from when I was recently working on a super beta machine that I also need to wrap up. I just want to check that I can hear the monitor fire up and that it makes some sort of whirring noises here, just to confirm the power supply is alive. Obviously it needs new belts, but let's just see if there's any life at all. I'll put in any old tape. I think this is a PAL recording, so it wouldn't play it anyway. Right, let's switch on the isolation transformer. Power up, and I should hear the monitor. I don't think I did. Well, there's a little bit of life in the deck. That's lighting up, but I don't think I heard the monitor. It sounds like the monitor is completely dead. I've never had that problem before. But first, let's start with the mechanics of the CVC mechanism. Okay, let's take the mechanism out, same as with the PAL one. There seem to be more cables connecting this than there were on the PAL one, which is annoying. As before, let's separate the deck from the main board. This is a royal pain in the Now I struggled with that. There were some things that made it particularly difficult. Is, for example, they'd soldered the lid down on the head amplifier. You need to get that out of the way in order to unplug the head cables. You can see why most people consider these to be just unfixable, because I'm fairly familiar with this and I struggle to get that apart. That was just horrible. Looking at the mechanism, the belts don't look too bad. I'll get you a better view of that. So this is the belt I had to replace recently on one of my machines. That is, oh, yeah, that feels a bit sloppy, and I can feel that the motor is not spinning. It's not being pulled round with that, so I can just feel it's not gliding round. Let me see what's wrong with that. Because in rotating that, this belt should rotate, this should move, and it's all not. I think the belt here has got all wrapped up in the motor. Oh, I might have to take this off. Now, I've never taken this assembly off before. Something I've been trying to avoid, but it looks like I'm going to have to, at least part of it. Doesn't look that hard, does it? One circuit off there. There is a spring on the other side of this, though. Just trying to get access to this motor pulley here. No, I don't want to take this off. I'm just too worried about how hard it'll be to put back together. So clearly we're going to have to replace this belt. And that one. That one looks good. Let's start by taking this one off. We've done this before. Can't be that hard. But before we replace this belt, we need to sort out what's going on with this longer one. I'm trying to give you a view there. You can kind of see that something's wrong, because the belt is low here and yet high there. So it's got itself all wrapped around, but I think the belt has gone round the back of here and got itself wrapped several times around the pulley. So I need to basically just cut this belt off and get rid of all the rubbish and replace it, which, as I'd explained on a previous video, involves releasing a spring on the other side of this post, and then you can feed the belt through here. Otherwise you have to take all this off, which is something I've been trying to avoid. Here is the spring that we have to release from that pillar in order to be able to pop the belt through there. Right, spring removed. The other side of the belt just connects to this post here. Just popping that belt over the top of the pillar. So we can pull it through from the other side. There's another pillar next to it which doesn't have a spring over the top, so it's a little easier to take one over. I can't show you that, there's just no way I can get you in there. The alternative is we take this off. Do you know, I just might. Well, I can feel how the belt has gone round the pulley several times, the motor pulley. I think it's 3 times I think it's gone round there. It appears to have got wrapped around the pulley on the other side of the deck as well, making it even harder to get off. The fact that I've managed to get the belt off without cutting it was the proof I needed that I can, using the same technique, refit the replacement when I find a replacement. That is extremely stretched and gooey. To replace this stretched belt here, I found one from my collection. I don't exactly know what size it is, but it feels about right, because it's got to go round here, over the top of that, and onto the motor pulley. It feels like it's got the right amount of twang. But the tricky bit, of course, is getting it past these levers. Okay, that I've done. Got it past the levers. I still need to refit the spring on the other side of this, but let's get the belt on the pulley there first. Right. That's that drive belt replaced. I'm going to leave this drive belt in. This one feels fine, as does that one there. Okay, that's capstan belt and main drive belt. So I've just got to refit the circlip here, refit the spring on the other side of this, and mechanically, hopefully, that would work. Would you believe I've managed to lose the circlip from that? That's quite annoying. Fortunately, I have kits from back in the day of spare parts of that type. Now I just have the gigantic task of reassembling all this. Right, we're ready to test the deck. I've got it reassembled but not fully fitted. I had a bit of a fright because I thought some tracks were missing down here, but it's actually just some sort of glue they've managed to stick on top. Now, the monitor doesn't work. And anyway, this is a PAL tape. I'll get an NTSC one later. But I just want to see if mechanically it runs. And then we can start worrying about whether we can pick up a video signal from somewhere and test this part. Right, so 110 volts on. That's noise. Says that it's not quite finished lace or unlace, so it's got the very common lacing and unlacing problem, but let's see if it can lace at all. No, the lacing ring is sticking, as is such a common problem with these. I can give it a nudge with a screwdriver. I'll get you set up so you can see that. Right, here's the lacing ring. I'll give it a push and see. I can see now that it's not fully unlaced because that indent there should be on this wheel and it's not quite. But let's try play and give it a push to see if we can get it started. Oh, you can tell it wants to go, but it's not. There's some marks on here. Looks like somebody's been pushing it already and it's not me. Oops. Come on then. Oh, not so good. Really struggling this one. That is a very, very badly stuck loading ring. This is the problem with CVC machines. You see it? Right, so now it's playing. But fundamentally, the mechanism is trying to work, but it's got a severely jammed up loading mechanism. And there isn't really a fix for that. So if it doesn't free itself up, I'm afraid it isn't going to be a good machine. Because similarly, it won't unlace now. Not quite sure which way it's trying to go. Come on in. That's play. Come on then, let's try and get to unlace. Oh dear. This is a bad one. Okay, let's take this mechanism off again, but I'm fairly sure that that is terminal, that there's no chance of ever fixing that. But let's take the deck off again and have a quick look at the loading mechanism. Right, I'm manually driving the loading mechanism with my finger. It is very heavy. Very sticky. There's something clearly jamming up in there. Now, from my memory, the problem is, and it's been a long time since I looked at this, that some of the plastic on some of these guides for the lacing ring, the loading ring, expands with age and applies excessive pressure on the ring and just prevents it from moving. So it's not just a simple case of relubricating it. And I don't believe there's any fix for it. Yes, I believe there's a plastic bearing right in there, and that's the bit that expands and jams up the whole mechanism. It's that bit in there. It's quite a long circular white plastic component, very hard to get to, and when you do get there you realise you're just stuffed anyway, because it will never work. So I'm afraid this machine is terminal. I can apply a little bit of aerosol grease in there or something, but I know it won't help. But let's just do that for a laugh and see if there's any chance at all. Bearing in mind, of course, I've got grease on the heads now, so you really wouldn't want to put a tape in here. But let's just see if we can get the mechanism to run a bit better. I'm really sure we won't. No, that's absolutely futile. It's still stiff as a board. There's no chance of that tiny little motor with a few little gears having enough torque to lace and unlace that. So I'm afraid this whole machine is terminal, which is a terrible shame. But that is what kills these CVC decks. I've cleaned the grease off the head anyway. I'll reassemble it, but it won't work any better, I'm sure of that. Okay, I'm sure it's going to be exactly the same, but let's try it anyway. Fast forward. Working. Rewind. Working. It's got to the front of the tape. And we go play, and it just jams up. No, it just doesn't. Not even trying, is it really? So what can I do with that? Well, I do have a scrap 212E, that's the portable, also an NTSC. I tried to repair it years ago and just gave up. But maybe the mechanism is the same. I think it probably is. And the mechanism might be in better order than this. So perhaps I can have a look at that and make kind of 1 out of 2. Just maybe, although of course the monitor doesn't work on this either yet. But that's a possibility. In the meantime, let's go back to the Grundig VP100 for a little bit, because this is going to be a bigger project. Just before we put this to one side, you know, it occurs to me, well, what do you think? These sockets, where it's labelled tape and line, do you reckon they would be inputs or outputs? It occurred to me they might well be outputs. So I'm going to hook these up to my monitor, force it to get into lace position with an NTSC tape, and see if there's a picture. And if there is, then, you know, it does prove that it might be worth spending the time swapping this deck out for one that's less broken. Let's give that a quick whirl, I think. Alright, I've tightened up that loose connector on the video output. Let's see if we can get it to go into play. So I have to be prepared to push the loading ring. Nothing at all. That's disappointing. I was hoping we'd actually see something there. So there may be other issues with this machine as well. I'm relying on somebody else's modification here. So maybe what I should do is something I've never tried before. There's a connector at the back here which says you can connect external power and charger, which would surely be one of the power packs for the portables. And that's got AV outputs. Now, these don't care if you feed them with NTSC or PAL. I've proven that before because I use one of these regularly with an NTSC machine, in fact this very one. This of course can run on 240 volts. Okay, so that's just set to on, VCR, charging off. I've never tried this configuration. I mean, I don't know if this power pack would have enough power to run the monitor. Maybe it only runs this section. Don't know if this switch will be operative or not. Probably not. Let's give it another whirl. Firstly, well, it works. It runs. Oh, this is definitely worth a try. Is it the case we're seeing a little bit of flicker on there that implies it's trying to pick up something? A bit like we were getting with VP100 actually. I'll just leave that playing for a little bit in case it cleans the heads up. It just might be a dirty head thing. It's worth a try, isn't it? Oh look, I press this button here labelled power and things change. I think it switched the monitor on. Let's go back to powering it from this power supply. So maybe I've just been a bit silly. Maybe this button needs to be pressed in order for the monitor to work. I've never noticed it before. Right, I've got it set to maybe this output to that monitor and also its own monitor. Let's see what happens if I power it up. I need to flick the switch at the back to... Right. Switch this on. I can hear sound. Aha! You can see why this wasn't working then. It's playing ridiculously fast. So it looks like we have got problems with the servos. I'm just going to mark where these controls are because some of these, at least one of these, is capstan freewheel and it may have been twiddled by somebody. So if I mark where they are, I can put them back if I just give them a small adjustment. Well, that one made it go even faster, I think. And even when it's stopped, there's still no line, no drum lock either. So the head drum's going too fast as well. I wonder if there's actually any video content in there. Okay, well, that was interesting. We know a bit more about the machine now. Just got it back to its unlaced position, fast forward and rewind okay. But the monitor, what's the monitor doing? It's buzzing loudly, regardless of the volume setting. So there's some cable somewhere not set up right. It's also too bright, but that's probably just an adjustment. Going back to the VP100, the area in question here is where the head amplifier is, and I've taken the top cover off and I've desoldered the bottom cover, and you'll remember that I had some trouble with that initially, that I'd damaged some tracks around here. So I've made sure that all those tracks are in good order, and I'll show you those through the microscope in a moment. My problem is that I can't work out exactly which component is which from here relative to this circuit diagram, because there's virtually no component IDs, just as the odd variable and test point, but everything else is not marked, and none of the diagrams are that clear either. But let's have a quick look at the diagram. I'm fairly sure that everything to the left here of this part of the amplifier circuit, I'm fairly sure that that's all to do with the record circuit. This on the right is the playback circuit. And you remember the problem I was having is that the input to these amplifiers on pins 3 and 7, well, it's of the head switching circuit, an amplifier, the inputs were just stuck high. Now, I don't know what the voltages are supposed to be around here, other than we do know that the 9.5 volt Wiedergabe, that should be 9.5 volts in playback that goes through this inductor, and that is true. And we did come across a resistor, and it's right in the middle there. That's a fusible resistor, and I thought, oh good, that may be open circuit and that'll be our problem, but no, that resistor is absolutely fine. So let's just have a quick look at some of that on the microscope. So here's one of the tracks I'd managed to damage when lifting the lower screening can off. So right here I damaged this bit of track, so I've repaired that with some wire, and where else, going around the edge here, up here I damaged this bit, and again I've linked it out with wire up to here, and there was some damage around here as well. So all those parts have been linked out and are confirmed that everything that should be ground is ground. And our fusible resistor, what I believe is fusible, can't tell because the diagrams aren't clear enough, is that one there. I think that's 33 ohms. Looks a bit like a fusible resistor, and I've metered out and it's fine. So firstly we'll do a quick sanity check, make sure that it's as it was before, that we're still not getting any video out. So we have this connected to the monitor. Power it up, press play. Just noise up there, I believe. I've been working long and hard on this problem. Looking at the schematic for the playback circuit, well, I believe this is record and this is playback. And the way it works is, when it's in playback mode, the voltage which switches these amplifiers on also switches on a transistor that short circuits or shorts one side of the heads to ground, so the other side of the winding then goes to the playback amplifier. When it's in record mode, the opposite happens. Another set of transistors switch the playback side to ground and allows the record signal to go through to the heads. So I've been trying to work out from the diagrams what is where, so I can actually trace the voltages on the bottom of the board. So this is the top of the board, this is the underside where they do mark some of the resistors. And I've been copying across, working out where the transistors are, working out where the pin out of the transistors is, and so being able to confirm that the relevant voltages are applied at least in the playback side, that the one side of the head is grounded, the other side is not grounded, and then goes into the amplifier circuit. All I get is DC voltages in here. I couldn't make any sense of them because I don't know what they're supposed to be. But in the end, I convinced myself that really everything here should be working. There are some DC voltages, but there's DC blocking capacitors. So this IC here, I believe, which is the head amplifier and switching circuit, is working. It's just got about 6 volts on the inputs, but that, I believe, is probably normal. So after a great deal of work on these, managed to convince myself that it really should work. So I connected it up to the monitor again and got the same result, no TV picture at all. And then I did something, and let me show you. Looking at the buttons here, there's this switch here for altering playback speed. And when I flick that on and then press play, I could get a picture. It's an awful picture. It's very dark, but a picture nonetheless. And I left it playing for a while in playback mode, and the head's probably cleaned up a bit, and I got this rolling picture. So in trick mode, if you like, slow motion, I get a relatively stable picture, a lot of noise at the top, and in normal speed it just keeps rolling. So I hooked that up to my oscilloscope here. I thought, well, actually, typically of these cameras, the cameras on these things, they would have a viewfinder which displayed the picture. So I probed around in here looking for something on the camera socket that looks like a video signal. And what I'm seeing there is a very messy video signal. You can see there's video in there, you can see the sync pulses, but it's extremely messy. And with a signal like that, you wouldn't be surprised if your picture was a rolling mess. I've got the time-based corrector hooked up again, so if I press stop for a moment, you'll get colour bars on there. They look a bit squashed too. So let's put a tape in I can record on, because this has got the record tab knocked out. So we've got the colour bars. I think those colour bars are a little bit crushed in image. I think that's a little bit dim. And still the picture we're seeing here, or the video signal we're seeing here, doesn't look right. So it all starting to feel a bit like capacitors in the video processing circuit. But armed with that, I should be able to feed colour bars in and put this into record mode, maybe without a tape, which might be easier, and sort out where my video signal's losing its integrity. Not going to be easy, but it's a major step forward from where we were earlier on. So it was what I think you'd call a crushed image. The video image is crushed, so the sync pulses are corrupted, and that's why the TV's not displaying it properly when it's in normal speed. I have, I should point out, put the screening covers back on around the head amplifier. Okay, so we have some life, but it's clearly not quite right yet. So okay, we made some progress on this. Do you remember a few weeks ago I left a cliffhanger saying, would this link, which restores the supply voltage, get us to a position where it works perfectly, doesn't work at all, it's just the same, or works a bit better? And my answer was the least popular result, which was exactly the same. However, having persevered with this, it seems that the real answer was works a lot better but still not there. And that was the most popular result. So there you are, clever people. Now we will come back to this, of course. We're making some solid progress with the VP100, which was a lot more successful than the NTSC colour showcase machine, which unfortunately looks like it might be a write-off. However, I will see if I've got a spare deck for it, and if so, maybe we could work on the problems with servos, because the capstan servo in particular is running really fast, and it doesn't look like it's got drum servo operation either. I'll do a lot more content on this and other audio and video equipment shortly, and I do have some good things coming up, so stick with us. Bye for now.